this lesson, we will look at direct and inverse proportion. We will do 3 exam questions that are quite common. In the picture, you can see a graphical representation of direct and inverse proportion. You can see a letter K, which is a constant of proportionality, and what you might consider another form of like an equal sign, which is known as just proportional to. So y is proportional to x in the first equation there. There are a few examples of how to write these in terms of a square, a cube, square root, and I also have the step-by-step process that you might want to follow. So what that is you set up the equation or convert the sentence into a proportion. You can find the value of k by replacing it into the equation. Find the pair of values of x and y generally, substitute them, and then solve for your new variable, the value of k. An example of this in real life may be, here's one with inverse proportion. The speed of a car, when it increases, will get you there quicker. So it moves in the opposite. So one value is increasing and the other value is decreasing with inverse proportion. So direct proportion, one value increases, the other value increases, and so on. Okay, let's do an example. A. M is inversely proportional to the square of p minus 1. So the setup, let's try and write this properly. So M is proportional to, so inversely proportional or proportional, put in this sign there. The square, so inversely proportional, so we put our k on top, to the square of p minus 1. So our first thing is just to make sure we've written out correctly, double check it, inversely proportional to the square of that, okay. And you'll often then plug in some values, substitute p and m in this case. But just before we go on, we could multiply that out, simplify it in a sense. So this will often happen in more difficult questions. So what's p minus 1 times p minus 1? And so you'll get p squared minus 2p plus 1. Put in those values. Now we're going to revert back to an equal sign here, if even, just to make it easier to look at. So what is m is 5 and p is 4. So we end up with k over 9. And we divide both sides by 9, and k will be 45. That's our first, so that's our first and second step. And now we're going to plug in this again. So replacing k in the original equation. 6 squared minus 12. So you end up with k was 45 in this case. I'll just skip that step, we know already. So it's 45. And find m when p is 6. So 6 squared minus 2 times 6 plus 1 is 25. And so get your calculator out if you want. 1.8 is your answer there. So what we're showing is how the quantities and amounts relate to each other and the relationship between these proportions. Okay, B. Y is directly proportional to the cube root of x plus 3. Okay. y, or a nice proportionality symbol. Okay, k, the root, cube root. Be careful what you're doing here. So the cube root is this one, x plus 3, and that's our setup. Okay, now we plug in our values. Y was 2 over 3. I'm going to just change it to equal sign just to make it an equation. And we had x was 5. So you can see that 5 plus 3 is 8. So what's the cube root of 8? Which is actually nice. Nice and easy to do. So 2/3 is equal to 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 cubed is 8. So 2k. And then divide both sides by 2. So instead of 2/3, we get 1/3. So k is equal to 1/3. From there again, plug it back in to the original. So y is equal to 1/3 cube root of 27. Let me just make sure that's clear. X plus 3. So we're looking at our original one, x plus 3. Now x is 24, so it's 27, yeah. So this works out nicely, actually. 1/3. And what times what times what? 3. So y is equal to 1. That's your final answer. 3 marks. So, last question. Third question, last question. Y is inversely proportional to the square of x plus 1. So again, these questions can be quite similar in the way they are. It's just the numbers sometimes can get a little bit difficult. But again, a typical question. Typical at 3 marks as well. Okay, y is proportional to, inversely proportional, so k on top, x plus 1 squared. This is very like our original first question, the part A. So y is equal to, so k, and we can just multiply that out as well if you want. It's up to yourself really. 2x plus 1. And now we plug in our values. So we're given y is equal to 0.875 is equal to k, and x is 1, so this should be okay. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. Divide both sides by 4. Use a calculator here more than likely, and you'll get k is equal to 3.5. Again, lastly, plug it back in again. Once you get k, you always substitute it back in. So 3.5 on top, and then 4 squared plus, so we have our, just remember we have x squared plus 2x plus 1, replace that with our 4, x is equal to 4 here. So 4 squared is 16 plus 8 plus 1 is 25. And again, a calculator will do this for you. Y is equal to 0 point something, 0.14. And they were 3 questions, typical questions for GCSE on direct and inverse proportion. And keep an eye on the table here that shows you the equation and proportionality relationship. So when you're doing these questions, you can just check back and forth on it to make sure that you're following the right steps and substituting in at the right time.